Good morning, Heather. Good morning, Ray. How are you?
Doing great. Good morning,
Wonderful.
everybody.
So, last week we had a topic that really set the world on fire, which was talking about how you had a better chance of winning a scratcher in the lottery than you do of applying for a job online. And you have more of a chance to win a scratcher than you do getting a job online. And after that show, my phone exploded, my email exploded, my LinkedIn exploded. I had so many people tell me that that was so on point.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to mention that because we had so much reaction to that last week. And we'll probably talk more about that going forward. But I'm hoping that we have as much interest in this topic as we did the one last week. But last week was like crazy on fire.
Yeah. No, we had lots of discussions about post the show and some of the feedback because there's uh, a lot of folks that are looking for a new opportunity, that are unemployed, that are running into all kinds of frustrations with this process, and we uh, we hit a nerve, or I'm not sure if we ripped off a band-aid,
Yeah.
the scab, and
Right, both.
a
Yeah.
little bit, but
Well,
no, definitely it was
I
a
had
good
a
one.
person that actually wrote me and said, "Oh my God, I wrote a white paper about this specific topic with that as the example." So they sent me the white paper. So more to come on that. But
Yeah.
the other thing that we decided that we were going to talk to people about, and I just got off a call before this with someone where we're talking about workplace lawsuits are surging, and are you prepared? So what we're seeing and what we're hearing from people literally all across the country is that they're getting sued. Like in the past, when you had an employee relations issue, you, as the HR person, wanted to make sure that you manage it appropriately because you didn't want it to go to litigation. Like you wanted to make sure that you had everything documented and you had all of your, information collected. So in the, I would say unlikely event that it went to litigation, you were ready to go with your information and be able to present it to counsel. And so that didn't happen very often. But what we're finding right now is that virtually every termination is going to litigation. Every termination that happens is being contested. And I think we have seen that, Heather and Ray, on all of the
Mhm.
clients that we're supporting, that even things that are grossly, you know, insane to object to. Like we had somebody that was that was caught vaping multiple times in the business and smoking in the business, and they were terminated because of that. They sued over that.
And it was against the law in that state to
It
be
was against
vaping
yeah, yeah,
indoors.
yeah. So we
Illegal.
yeah, so we fired a person for cause for violating a state law, and there was still an attorney that took the case and tried to sue over that. So it's crazy right now. And that's
Yep.
just one example. I mean, that's like a total like extreme example. Like I'm suing because the hot coffee spilled on my, leg. So I'm suing.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah.
So if you look back, at what the surge, why do you think that this is what's happening? What's the cause in this crazy increase?
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this. I think a couple of factors that are driving this. Uh, number one, nothing is private anymore. I think that there's just this whole, you know, uh, people taping and filming everything that happens to them. I mean, we've seen, people get laid off, on TikTok.
Hmm.
And so I think one of them is just, folks are just much more open with information and what's happening in their day-to-day lives. Um, and just like you're seeing, uh, every other ad on TV is for an accident injury lawyer. There are similar lawyers out there looking for workplace, lawsuits, and and are willing to take the work, and without any upfront cost, to the person. So I think that those are a couple of factors, and then also, I think Jason, one of the things that one of the attorneys we spoke with was, uh, employees now are getting consultants to help them through any performance issues that they're having at work.
They're called exit coaches, and they're also attorneys. So what they do is you call one of these exit coaches, and as you're exiting a corporation, they help you negotiate your package. They help you negotiate your severance, whatever it is, and then they're also attorneys. So as you're going through the process, they then also notice, oh, so and so company didn't do this, right, or they made this little mistake. Let's go ahead and negotiate whatever the package is, or wait a minute, stop negotiating. We're going to go ahead and sue them instead. And so these exit coaches have really risen in popularity.
Yeah, and I think the
Wow.
other, like you said, Jason, it becomes even more important that you and your HR team understand the local laws around how quickly to get somebody their final paycheck. It Every state is different. It can be from the day that you terminate them, in California, to
Right.
72 hours to the next payroll period. So if you mess up that, that can be kind of the trigger to get into a lawsuit. So there's just a lot of things that have to be done correctly, um, that can trigger that lawsuit. But I think those exit coaches are becoming very common throughout the U.S. So don't be surprised if your employee shows up on a Zoom call with their exit coach also on the line,
Mm.
or maybe they'll be on the line and you have no idea that they're on the line.
Yeah, you need to assume somebody else is listening. I will tell you two other things that are compounding this. One is AI. So now it's super easy to go into AI, look up research case law, get ChatGPT to write you a very legalistic letter to help you research whatever issues that you believe you're having with your employer. So where in the past you maybe had to go to an attorney, or you had to look up things online and write your own letter and do a lot of research, and people didn't necessarily want to do that. AI has made this a super easy task to pursue. And then the other thing is just frustration. People are frustrated about the fact that perhaps they're new to the workforce, or they are coming in and they didn't feel like they were mentored the way they needed to be during the pandemic, or they didn't get trained and the job didn't work out the way that they wanted to. And maybe they have hundreds of $1,000s in debt because of student loans, and they're upset about that. And they're not like other generations. And they're saying, look, people in the past just sort of put up with it. Hey, boomer, you just suffered in silence. And we're not like that. Like we're gonna take it to the streets. We're gonna take the man down, and we're gonna sue over these things. Where in the past, that wasn't the mindset of people. Now, younger workers have more of a I'm gonna make sure that I'm taken care of, and if it means I'm going to sue you, I don't care. Back to your point of nothing's a secret anymore. I don't care if I'm known that I sued the company, but I stood up for what was right. And so there's a lot more of that now than there's ever been before.
And what about, a lot of the clients that we've taken on this year started off small. Perhaps it was the CEO or CFO that was, HR. And as they're growing, they've brought us on board. And now there is a focus on HR. And no longer are we, if you will, the good old boy atmosphere of just letting things go. But now we're going to start really looking at performance and measuring performance. And now we're going to start coaching people that are not performing. And I think that perhaps that's some of any company that all of a sudden realizes, gosh, we really need to be more professional in our performance management. And then people are, they don't like that they've been written up. They don't like that it's been pointed out that they've been late 10 times in the last 2 weeks or whatever it is.
Yeah, no,
citing
a
recent example there that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think we're starting to have to coach a lot of the leaders that we work with on, hey, you really cannot fire somebody tomorrow. They haven't done anything egregious. Maybe they're having their performance is bad, but we've got to figure out how to document it and prepare and do it the right way.
Exactly.
One of the big preventive measures is you can't make snap decisions and then expect to not have any potential future repercussions legally, because you will. So, we're really focused on, coaching our leaders, really understanding what the performance issues are, uh, documenting those, putting employees on performance improvement plans, and documenting what they're doing correctly or what they're not doing correctly through the process to be able to make a decision that is, a much better decision and less prone to legal action. But you still have, uh, you know, managers that, even though we may provide them, you know, um, the direction to the drinking water, they still don't want to drink. They want to do it, their way, or they're too
Reactive.
busy. And that's just kind of an ongoing process for us to continue to be proactive and to work with those managers, because that's really important.
And to keep it on the facts. That's one thing that Jason always mentions. Keep the facts in. Don't let the emotion in. The facts only, and numbers if it's relatable, and the facts and the numbers don't lie. It can't be that you just were in a bad mood, didn't like that person that day.
Yeah, exactly. And that happens a lot. I mean, people get upset and they're like, and then, he had a bad attitude when he came into the office and he threw down his pencil and I want to write him up. Okay, well, he can have a bad attitude. He can put down his pencil hard. He can do that. But what did he do that you can write him up for? What did he do? Oh, well, I don't know. He really didn't do anything. Okay, well, then, we need to write him up for something that he really did. Now, Heather, going back to what you said is really important. Sometimes when you're smaller and you're starting out, you can tolerate bad behavior a little bit more than you can as you start to get prosperous. You can finesse it a little bit more, like, I just looked the wrong way. I really need this guy. It's really hard for us to hire people. And, I'd rather have somebody than nobody, blah, 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 blah. So you look the other way. But then as you start to get bigger and you expand and you have more people in your business and you see that you have more issues with a particular individual in terms of how they're acting, how they're working with others and everything else, you're like, gosh, I can't operate the way I operated before. That's just not going to help me get to, where I want to be. I was at, we were at, $3 million in revenue, 3 years ago. Now we're at $12 million, at $12 million, we just have to be a different company. And so that happens a lot, where the things that you tolerated, you just can't tolerate anymore. And then people are surprised by that because they think they're still should be able to act and, have the behavior that they did 3 years ago. And they're like, well, why do I have to change? I don't understand. Why do I have to be nice to everybody?
Yeah.
Why do I have to come in on time? Why not? Well, everything changes. And so you have to be ready and able to do that. And the other thing too is it's much better, no matter where you are in your journey as a company, to always manage your performance issues the way that you think they should be managed. And that's, really appropriately. You don't want to get loosey-goosey in the beginning, because then you've got all these problems that you got to deal with them, strategically from the very beginning. And that makes things a lot easier for you.
What about something else that we're working on, just looking at the best practices for HR leaders, is having established policies, procedures, handbooks that everyone has read, has a chance to ask questions, and has signed, and that it consistently, anytime something comes up, it's right to the handbook. How do we handle the situation? Coaching your employees, if they have questions, go look at your handbook before you come to me, and then come to me, let's talk about it. I think is it's the things we're working with our clients to make sure that these policies are in place, so it's very clear what the expectation is on performance.
Yeah, Heather always groans when I say to her, "Oh, find that section in the handbook so that we can put it in the office, so we can put it in the written warning."
Yeah.
And then, again. And I'm like, and she said, "Oh, you always ask the same question." I'm like, "Yeah, because we have a policy, and you violated the policy. You agreed to the policy, and we want to remind you about the policy." It makes the issue so black and white that most employees can't argue with it. You get into trouble when you don't have policies that you can point to, and people are like, "Well, that was never written down. We don't have anything about that. I don't have to do that." And so you're right. That makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that's another great example is, we had a situation where, an employee, was required, to drive, and now they can't drive. And again, it wasn't in the policy, but it was in their job description. So your job description says this is a requirement for you to do your job. And when you can't do that, that's a problem. So again, documenting it in the right places, your job descriptions, your employee handbook, those are huge. And then I think another best practice that we're really focused on with our clients is really just looking at the big picture. And if you've got several employees that may be terminated, all within a short period of time, let's figure out a way to consolidate that so that it's not you're not having the organization think, well, what's going to happen next? If they're happening kind of haphazardly. So really important to look at this from a big picture, and also, like Jason said, have a policy, have a process that you utilize to manage performance, whether it's a performance improvement plan or documenting performance issues with the employee. I mean, those are the critical ones. That way you've got that ready to go to make a final decision.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I always what I realized when I started doing employee relations, and I've lived by this motto ever since I started, doing it when I worked at Cisco, and I had a manufacturing plant when Cisco still made things, and I was the head of HR for one of the manufacturing plants, and so we had a lot of very complicated employee relations issues. And so the motto that I learned very early on is no good deed ever goes unpunished. And that's especially true in employee relations. Whenever you let a performance management issue just sit out there and you don't take it on, or you give somebody more latitude than they really should, what always ends up happening, and I know I should not say always and never, but it's pretty universal that when you do that, people take advantage and the problem gets worse. And so then you end up having a really big problem to deal with later. So that's why it's really important to manage to your policies, and manage your employees so that they are being your best employees, and don't allow them to be managed to be your worst employees. So that means staying on top of things, staying on top of attendance, staying on top of the things that they need to do to be successful. So that's your job as a manager. And I found anytime that didn't happen, we ended up just having messy employee relations issues. And so it doesn't help you to be the nice guy. It helps you to manage and manage your business and manage your employees.
Don't you think that, let's say a good portion of employees are going to have a higher respect for a leader when they know where they sit, versus guessing, okay, I did that. That was wrong. Nothing was said. Am I going to get in trouble later? Can I keep doing it? What's what's the thought around that? It's far easier if it's very clear communication, it's very consistent. Everyone has to follow the same rules, and everyone knows where they sit.
Oh, Heather, you have a teen. You've had teenager. You know that's what you need to do. Managing teenager is very much like managing employee relationships. If you parented a teenager, you know the answers here.
Exactly.
What about any examples on case studies on employee relations that we've had to work through?
Which ones do you want?
I know, right? How much time do we have?
Yeah.
Do people want to just to get some popcorn and a
Yeah. It's gonna take a while.
Go
But
through
no.
all these.
Yeah, and I think what
gosh.
we're seeing is a lot more focus on roles like sales, lots of focus on sales positions and delivering results. Also, a lot of focus on customer facing roles. That where the employee may not be doing a great job on the back end, but the customers love them. And figuring out the right balance. But I think there's just going to be a lot of different issues that are popping up, and even we're dealing with one where we're trying to make sure that that the clients are happy with employees at their site, and that are from a hygiene perspective. So those are the kinds of things that we're having to deal with and coach employees on a day-to-day basis.
Well, remember that you can be really good at one or two parts of your job. Like you could be the best person in the world. So you have 10 parts of your job, and 8 of them you're terrible at, and 2 of them you're really good at. That doesn't mean you're doing a good job. That just means you're doing, you're doing well in two parts of your job. You're still doing horrible in the other 8 parts. Your job consists of 10 parts, and unless you're doing well in all 10 parts, you're not performing. And a lot of times, managers and employees really have a hard time understanding that. Well, he's doing really good in this part. Well, what about the other 8 parts? Well, not so much. Okay, well, he's not performing. And that's how I always used to explain it to managers and employees. Like, yeah, that's really great, but what about all these other things? You can't meet a deadline. You're rude to your coworkers. You don't show up on time. But, you write amazing proposals and everybody loves the proposals. That's great. But all these other things are an abysmal failure by you. And so when you start really breaking down the component parts of what somebody's doing, and are they really performing the way that you need them to perform? And the answer becomes no, then it really is more apparent to you about, well, this person really isn't applying the value that we need in the organization. And so, that's one of those things that, as a management team, you have to learn, even as an employee to learn. Just because I'm good at one part doesn't mean I'm knocking the ball out of the ballpark every day.
Yep. Nope. That's exactly it. And the other thing too is, especially in roles like in sales, if you're not tracking, what kind of, the business development side of their role, of their job, how many contacts they're making on a week-to-week basis, how many meetings they're setting with potential clients, because if you don't have a backlog and a pipeline, you're never going to sell. And if you're not tracking that kind of information as a leader, then that's a problem. And we've had situations where, we've asked those questions. Well, how many phone calls does he need to make a week? How many contacts and how many meetings and, how many proposals? We haven't been tracking that. Well, I mean, kind of hard to tell somebody they're a bad performer if we don't know what's the standard and what they're doing against the standard. So
it goes back to that procedure and policy.
Yeah, establish that, because that's so important.
And I think, as far as some of the successful things that we have seen, in particular with the smaller companies that have, gotten to the point they realize, well, we really need HR expertise. They've brought us on board. We're now their HR team. And one of the successful parts is coaching our clients to come to us. That we're here for a reason, and numerous times they've come back to us and have said verbatim, "I am so glad that we have you to help us with this, because we had no idea what we were doing before. We were making an F in HR, and now we're making an A+ because we have you to take care of us and to advise us and coach us on what to do." And so if you're in a place where you are experiencing that, let us know, because we can help you. We can be the expertise in guiding you on what to do in these situations.
Well, here's the thing. HR, everybody has an opinion on HR. I mean, everybody's, people are manager, everybody works. Everybody has an opinion on how it should be done. And so a lot of times you have an opinion and you go off of, well, this is what I think should be done, and it's not right. And so they'll ask me to go to HR. They don't know what they're doing. I know what to do. I'm a manager and I've done this for 10 years or 20 years. And I have to listen to them. So they go off, they do it, and they do it wrong, and then we have a problem. Now, the thing about it is, if you were a rocket scientist and somebody said, I'm going to go off and I'm going to build a rocket, and they don't know anything about a rocket, but you're a rocket scientist, and they didn't come and talk to you, you would think that they were crazy. Like, I'm a rocket scientist. I know how to build a rocket, and so, or you would never go off and build a rocket if you weren't a rocket scientist. And so, but HR, everybody thinks that they know it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like, seriously, HR does exist for a reason. And there are things that we know and know how to do that perhaps you don't that you don't know. That's why I always said, oh God, I wish I was a rocket scientist, because nobody would ever question me. I'd be like, well, here's the thrust, here's the internal thermal dynamics, and use this DC equation, and blah, blah, blah. Everybody would be like, oh my God, you're so smart. I couldn't even figure that out. Oh, you're so great. But, you tell somebody, how to manage somebody. It's like, oh, I disagree with that. That's not what to do. And you're like, okay, I've only done this 10,000 times. This is what you should do. So, it's hard, but you're right. Your point is, come to HR. They know how to do it. And we were with a friend of ours, who's an attorney, on a call the other day, a couple of weeks ago. And he said, look, companies are really beginning to freak out over having to deal with employees from state to state to state, meaning that employment laws are now so complicated in every state that we're getting to the point now where there needs to be expertise in every state to handle these complicated employment matters like that we have. You can't be in a point anymore where you just have one generalist, and the one generalist is going to manage to potentially California law, which used to be the most crazy and complicated. And chances are you're going to be safe in all the other states because you're managing the California law. Now, so many states have so many different things. You need to have experience, or people have experience with all of these things. So the level and complexity of things is just changing exponentially. So unless you're keeping up, chances are you're going to get dragged into one of these lawsuits, and you're going to not do something right, and you're going to get in trouble for it. And like we've seen, Heather, some of these laws now, they're just like, if you don't do it, you get a huge fine. It goes right to the attorney general of that state, and they don't even allow you to
appeal.
Contest it. Yeah.
You get contested. It's just like, oh no, that's $10,000 pay. Yeah. And so it's crazy. And so the more that you delegate to the experts, it's better.
Yep. Exactly.
Agreed.
Exactly. So true.
And the funny thing is, we're like now 28 or 29 minutes into talking about employee relations. And the thing about it is, most HR departments hate talking about employee relations. They really want to ignore it because it is the work that really is considered non-value added, because you're having to deal with all of these things that don't really benefit the business at the end of the day. They're not strategic. Sometimes they don't really help, promote the bottom line. But honestly, they're the things that take the most time, and they're the most costly in terms of frustration and employees getting frustrated about the culture of the organization because they're working with people that they don't like or aren't doing a good job. So this is always a very heated topic, and one of the reasons why you got to do it well.
Yep. And the other part too is it doesn't affect the bottom line until you do something wrong and you get and you end up spending millions of dollars on a case. Then it impacts the bottom line. So, but you're right. HR departments do not want to talk about this a whole lot, but it is critical.
I mean,
I
proactive instead of reactive.
I know. I remember there were a couple of companies where, I would have to put on my, weekly report what I was working on, or I would put on a weekly report what I was working on, and I would mention like, oh, here's all the employee relations cases I'm working, and then they would tell me, oh, don't list those. I'm like, why? They're like, oh, well, nobody really wants to see. No, nobody really wants to see that. That's not work that benefits the business. And I'm like, well, I'm spending like hours and hours on this. Why would you not want to see that? Well, people don't really like that work. And so I always thought that was so odd. But that happened to me, at a number of companies where they just didn't want to have a conversation about that. That was just like, ugh, ignore that,
And that's when issues come up.
Yes. All right. Well,
good topic.
Good topic. Obviously, I was that's passion to me, having dealt with it for so long, and we're good at it. We know how to take care of it here.
Yep. So true.
That's right.
All right. If they need to reach you, Ray, how do they reach you?
Ray, REY at thrivehrconsulting.com.
And
or
if you need
just
to call us, 888-393-3453. Heather, how do they reach you?
So I had the privilege of my first and last name in my email. So it's Heather.Simmons with 2 M's at thrivehrconsulting.com.
Okay. Well, when we started it, there was only 2 people. We started it, there was only 2 people. So it was easy to say Jason and Ray. So now that is more. So I'm sorry. We went to a more traditional naming convention.
Yeah.
But that is growth, Heather, and that is a good thing.
I said privilege.
Yes. It's Jason at Thrive HR Consulting, which I may be changing it to Jason.Walker at Thrive HR Consulting next week, because Heather has just shamed me into a new email address.
You're just jealous.
There you go.
I am. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day. Thanks.
All right. We'll talk later.